All right, let's dive in. Plato and math, right? Sounds a little limiting, but you know our listeners are up for it. I'm excited to dig into these writings you sent over the Republic, Meno, Timaeus. I mean, those are like the all-stars of Plato, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what's so cool about them, especially when you're looking at math, is that Plato doesn't see math as just like numbers and
Right,
equations.
there's got to be something deeper going on there.
He saw it as this incredible bridge between the world we experience every day, the world we see and touch and hear, and a higher level of reality.
Higher level.
Yeah, like a more perfect, unchanging reality, the world of forms.
Okay, the forms. Now that's a whole other rabbit hole. Remind me, what are those again?
All right, so think of it like this. Imagine a perfect circle, right? You can try to draw one, I can try to draw one, but it's always going to be a little bit off.
Totally.
Yeah.
You can never get that perfect curve, no matter how hard you try.
Exactly. So for Plato, that perfect circle, that perfect concept exists in the realm of forms. It's like this pure, eternal blueprint. And all the circles we see in the real world, they're just like shadows or copies of that perfect form.
Okay. So where does math fit into all of this?
Well, math, for Plato, is how we access those forms, those perfect concepts.
So it's like math is the secret key to unlocking a deeper reality.
I love that. You're getting it. And to really see this, we got to go to the Republic.
One of my favorites.
Right. He lays out this awesome analogy called the divided line. It's like, imagine a line divided into sections, right?
Okay, got it. A line with sections.
And each section represents a different level of knowledge. So down at the bottom, you've got the world we see, the world of shadows, the world of appearances. It's kind of like our starting point, right?
Okay, just based on what we see.
Exactly. But then as you move up the line, you get to the forms, that pure, unchanging knowledge. That's like the top level.
Top tier, the ultimate goal.
And guess where math sits? Right smack dab in the middle.
The bridge between the two.
You got it. It's a step up from just relying on our senses, right? It's the way we start to tap into that deeper understanding of reality, the reality of the forms.
So by doing math, we're getting closer to those perfect concepts, to that higher reality.
Exactly. And that's where Meno comes in. You remember that one, right?
Oh yeah, the one with Socrates and the slave boy.
Yep, that's the one. So in that dialogue, Socrates is guiding this slave boy who's never studied geometry before, and he leads him to solve this pretty complex problem.
I remember that. It's pretty amazing how the boy figures it out, even though he supposedly has no prior knowledge.
It's like he's remembering something he already knew, right? And that's exactly Plato's point.
So he's not really learning new stuff. He's like remembering these perfect concepts, these forms.
Exactly. It's a process of remembering. And this is why Plato believed we all have this innate knowledge, a kind of memory of the forms from before we were even born.
Wow, that's a pretty wild idea. So for Plato, learning math isn't about memorizing formulas. It's about unlocking this knowledge that's already inside us.
That's it. It's about getting closer to true knowledge. And this is also why Plato puts so much emphasis on math, especially when it comes to leadership.
Oh, are we talking about the Philosopher King now, that whole idea?
Exactly. Remember in the Republic, he talks about how the ideal ruler, the Philosopher King, needs a very specific education. And guess what's at the core?
Math. Of course. But why, though?
Well, Plato saw math as like the ultimate mental training ground.
Like a mental gym.
Yes, he thought it developed your ability to think logically, critically, abstractly, all those skills that a good leader needs.
Makes sense. Like if you can handle a tough geometry problem, you can probably handle a political crisis, right?
Exactly. That's the idea. Plato believed that this kind of rigorous mental training, the kind you get from grappling with math, was essential for anyone who wants to make good decisions, to lead effectively.
So it's not just about crunching numbers, it's about developing those crucial thinking skills.
You got it. And this ties into another really important concept, dialectic.
Dialectic. Now there's a word I haven't heard in a while.
Well, get ready to hear it a lot more because it's central to Plato's thinking. It's like this amazing back and forth where you're constantly questioning, testing ideas, pushing for deeper understanding, really getting to the heart of the truth.
So like a mental sparring match.
I like that, yeah, like a mental sparring match where the goal is to get closer and closer to truth. And you know what? Plato thought that math was the perfect foundation for this kind of rigorous thinking.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Because math is all about logic and reasoning. It like sets you up to be good at dialectic.
Precisely. It like sharpens your mind, helps you think more clearly, more logically, and that's crucial for anyone who's seriously trying to engage in this dialectic process, anyone who's really searching for truth.
Okay, so math is the bridge to the forms. It trains us to think critically, and it helps us engage in this dialectic process to really get at truth.
Got it. But what about the universe itself? Does math play a role there too?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where things get even more mind-blowing. Plato was really fascinated by this idea of like the universality and the eternal nature of mathematical truths.
Right, like 2 plus 2 equals 4, no matter where you are or what time period you're in.
Exactly. It's true across cultures. It's true across time. It's like this eternal, unchanging truth.
It always blows my mind to think about that. That something so, I don't know, abstract can be so consistently true, like everywhere in the universe, always.
Right. It's amazing, isn't it? And for Plato, this kind of consistency pointed to something really, really profound. He thought it suggested that there's this deeper, unchanging order beneath the constantly changing surface of the world we experience.
So like there's this underlying structure to reality, and that structure is like based on math. Exactly. And in Timaeus, Plato actually gets really specific about this. He describes the structure of the universe using all these mathematical ratios and shapes.
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Didn't he talk about the golden ratio and like
Yeah.
Platonic solids, all that cool geometry stuff?
Yes. He talks about the golden ratio, which is like this really elegant proportion that you see all over in nature. And he talks about the Platonic solids, which are these perfect three-dimensional shapes. He really thought that these mathematical principles were like woven into the very fabric of the cosmos.
Wow, so Plato's basically saying that the universe is like a giant, perfectly designed math equation.
It is a pretty wild idea, isn't it? But it really speaks to his belief that math can allow us to like glimpse this hidden order, this kind of eternal perfection that underlies the world we experience with our senses.
Okay, so math helps us access the forms, it trains us to think critically, it helps us engage in dialectic, and it even reveals the structure of the universe. That's pretty amazing.
Right. Math is pretty awesome when you think about it.
It is. But I gotta ask, this whole idea that the forms are like a separate reality, I mean, isn't that a bit hard to swallow?
Well, that gets to the heart of what we call Platonic realism. It's this idea that these abstract forms have their own real independent existence. Like they're not just in our minds, they're not just part of the physical world, they're like this whole other realm of pure being.
I mean, that's a pretty bold claim. I think today most people see Mac as more of a tool that we've created,
Hmm.
like a language we use to describe the world rather than a window into some other realm.
You're right. Our understanding of mathematics has definitely evolved a lot since Plato's time. We've explored areas of incredible complexity. We've developed all sorts of new branches of math that Plato probably couldn't have even imagined.
So where does that leave Plato's views then? Are they still relevant in the face of all this, modern math?
That's the big question. And honestly, it's not an easy one to answer. I think it's safe to say that our perspective on mathematics has definitely become, I don't know, more nuanced, more grounded in the practical, maybe. But even so, the questions that Plato raised about, the nature of truth, the nature of knowledge, the relationship between abstract ideas and concrete reality, those questions are still super relevant, even today.
So even if we don't buy into the whole separate realm of forms thing, engaging with Plato's ideas can still be really valuable, right?
Absolutely. It's like he's pushing us to think deeper, to question our assumptions about how we know what we know, and that's never a bad thing.
Yeah, it's like he's giving us this like mental workout, making us really think critically about what we believe and how we know things.
Exactly. And that leads to another really interesting thing about Plato's ideas about math. On the one hand, he's like super into it, right? He sees it as this pathway to these eternal truths.
Right, the forms, all that.
Exactly. But on the other hand, he also acknowledged that math, by itself isn't enough.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, he believed that if we only rely on our senses, on just observing the world around us, we're never going to get to true knowledge.
So it's like math is a great tool, but it's not the be-all, end-all.
You got it. There's more to understanding the world, to understanding reality, than just measuring and calculating.
And I bet you're going to tell me that this is where dialectic comes back in.
Yeah? Know it. It's about using reason and logical argument to go beyond the limitations of our senses, to really grapple with those abstract, those eternal truths that math helps us access.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all this fits together. Math opens the door to the forms, and then dialectic helps us explore and understand them. And this whole process just sharpens our minds, makes us better thinkers, helps us understand the world better.
Exactly.
But let's be honest. Does any of this stuff actually matter to someone who's not, like, trying to become a philosopher king? I mean, it's all very interesting, but is it actually relevant to, everyday life?
Oh, I think Plato would argue that it absolutely is relevant, like super relevant. He believed that the kind of thinking you develop through math, through dialectic, that ability to think abstractly, to question your assumptions, to think critically, those are essential skills for anyone, no matter what you do in life.
So even if you're not trying to, like, unravel the mysteries of the universe, working on those mental muscles through math can make you just a sharper, more insightful person overall.
Exactly. It's about developing a mind that can see beyond the surface, a mind that can see patterns and connections, make good judgments. And in a world that's just like throwing information at us constantly, that ability to think critically, to really analyze things, it's more important than ever.
But just like Plato is giving us the mental tools we need to navigate this crazy, complex world.
I like that. He's giving us the mental toolkit. And that's honestly one of the most powerful things about his philosophy. He reminds us that, true knowledge, true wisdom, it's not just about passively absorbing information, right? It's about actively engaging with ideas, questioning things, always pushing for a deeper understanding.
So I guess to wrap things up, we can say that for Plato, math was so much more than just numbers and formulas, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It was this pathway to truth, this training ground for the mind, a way to understand the structure of the universe even. Pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It really is. And even though, our understanding of math has obviously evolved a lot since Plato's time, the questions he asked, those big questions about, what is reality, what is knowledge, what's our place in the cosmos, those questions are still just as powerful and relevant today as they were back then.
Absolutely. And hey, if Plato were around today, can you imagine? I bet he'd be fascinated by all the amazing things happening with modern math, like in computer science and artificial intelligence. Who knows what kind of incredible insights he'd have about all that. But hey, that's a deep dive for another day, right?
Definitely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Plato and mathematics. We hope you learned something new, maybe had some of your own assumptions challenged along the way. Until next time.